What's coming out of the Department of Education? How can we get our kids back on track and are we moving in a decent direction? So I'm excited about our next guest. She is with the New Civil Liberties Alliance. Excited to have on with us here, Peggy Little. Peggy, how are you, my friend?
I'm just fine. Thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate very much you coming on the program. I love this topic. Love talking about how the education system is, what direction it's moving in, because there are some things I'm very happy about, but there's some things I'm very concerned about. But there's a new proposal, this proposed priorities, American History and Civics Education. What in the world is this? This came out just a couple of months ago. Is this a new form of how they want to teach American history and civics in the country?
It's unprecedented. When the Department of Education was founded during the Carter administration in 1979, I was old enough to know that it was controversial even then. And so Congress passed, as part of the organic statute that created the Department of Education, they said there shall be no federal control over subject matters taught, programming, curricula, etc. Since 1979, there have been two more statutes, one that says essentially the same thing, and then a third one that says the federal government and Department of Education cannot use grants in aid conditioned upon what you teach. So the good news is it can't do this.
That is good news. No, what is this priority? If they're trying to change it, or if they're trying to influence, I mean, this may be coming from the federal level. Obviously, if we can disregard it at the statewide level with different school board of education or different, school boards at the state level or local levels, I mean, what would the priorities want to change? How would they want to try and change the way we teach our history?
Well, they cite in the proposed priorities, explicitly cite the work of How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. They also talk about the 1619 Project, which was a history project put together by the New York Times and a number of other organizations, which has been critiqued as being not only controversial but inaccurate. And then they also make a reference to critical race theory. So those are pretty specific references. They're not permitted under federal law, and they do all tend to lean towards one view of history.
Yeah.
I would be opposed to them if they said we should be teaching Shakespeare and Newtonian logic and the new math,
right?
Because they can't do it, and it's not even a subject matter issue. Although it is troubling that they have chosen those three very controversial areas, they just can't set a federal curriculum for the public schools.
Yeah, well, that's at least good news. But, I mean, essentially the three that they're trying to embrace here is really saying, here's how you be anti-racist. Is you go around and you call everybody a racist who's white, or you call anybody a racist who supports a certain idea. Then they can change their ways because we're woke. And that's really the mentality here, isn't it?
It is. And we have some examples of things that have emerged from various schools experimenting with this kind of education, which has followed on the heels of the George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movements. And there are several disturbing things. I think the one that we mention in our comment, this is New Civil Liberties Alliance, we filed a comment with the Department of Education saying you can't do this. But we also mention that these classes typically segregate people by race, and then one group studies why they're oppressors, and another group studies why they're victims. That kind of approach, to the extent that it is adopted, is very damaging to race relations. And furthermore, it teaches people to perpetuate the racial divide. A lot of healing needs to be done, and certainly the history and the often shameful history of race relations in this country should be taught, and I don't think anyone would disagree with that.
Yeah.
But I think it is also hugely important to present as many points of view on those issues, present also the positive aspects of history and civics education that has led, this country to abolish slavery, which it did do, sometimes years in advance of many other countries.
Yeah.
So you need to put it in perspective. You need to understand how things like all men are created equal in our Declaration founding was inspiring not just to Abraham Lincoln, but to Martin Luther King and to people all over the world.
Yeah, it's sad. I've never understood this concept because I always try to understand the other side. I may not agree with it, but I at least try to understand how they connect dot A to dot B and how they go through their thought process, and just thinking that everything is bad. It really comes down to they don't have a good job or a very good way of putting things into perspective. Instead of saying, To Kill a Mockingbird, instead of looking at it and saying, wow, that's the way things were then. How have we changed and how have we gotten better since then? Instead, we go, oh, hey, that book's about racism because they called that guy a bad name, so we're going to ban that book completely so you don't even know about that history. And then with projects like this, then everybody's racist or everybody's a victim. What's concerning is it goes deeper than this as well, I think, because if we're being taught this, if you're a person of whatever minority descent it may be in the nation, then it really says that you are a victim. You will not be able to get ahead in society. You will not have that, the American dream, the streets paved with gold, and the opportunity for whatever you want to become, whether you want to become president or an astronaut or, an engineer or a millionaire or whatever. You can't do that because you're of a minority descent. There is systematic racism, so you will never get anywhere. Don't even try to get anywhere because that's the way the system is, and we need to be aware of it to call other people names. So when I fail in society, I can blame you because it's all your fault. I mean, we're really teaching a generation that.
And that's a terrible message to send.
Yeah.
Not just about the nature of our country and our culture, but it is a terrible message to send to young people. Furthermore, segregating school children by race has been illegal since 1954, and there is no basis to start that up again.
Yeah. Is there a concern at all about a new segregation today, whether it's based on race or sexual orientation, or even now with concern of maybe vaccinated or dirty, filthy, unvaccinated people in the country with COVID? I mean, are we going down the road of such weird division that we could potentially see a segregated society in some way, shape, or form again with some of these teachings?
Sadly, it appears that way. I think that some of these ideological impositions on students do risk very dangerous divisions. It's kind of like a psychological resegregation. And I'm thinking, as you talk about vaccinated and unvaccinated, there's a very simplistic view of that, which people take, not realizing that a lot of people have examined the evidence, have felt that maybe they already had COVID and they think they are naturally immune, and should not have to risk a vaccination, which does have side effects. And there seems to be no room for this kind of honest debate and honest data that needs to be more part of our education.
Yeah.
Parents need to pay attention to what their children are being taught in school. It's extremely important for them to get involved, to be aware of what is being taught, and to speak up to their local boards of ed or whoever forms the curriculum in their district.
Yeah, amen to that. Peggy Little, New Civil Liberties Alliance. We got about 30 seconds left here, but this proposed priorities, this thing they're trying to push, as you mentioned, they can't implement it and tell the school boards, school districts all over the country this is what they have to teach. But is it gaining ground, and do you think local districts may start picking this up?
I fear that is going to happen. There are some useful reports about this. I know in Loudoun County, Virginia, there is a black parent who has spoken up very vociferously against the view of critical race theory, and that's on YouTube, and I recommend it for viewing.
Oh, very good. Peggy, I appreciate it. Good stuff. We got to get you back on the program. New Civil Liberties Alliance, the proposed priorities is the plan from the Department of Education. We appreciate the info. Let's get you back on again soon.
Thank you so much.